When a long-term partner dies, the surviving spouse undergoes what psychologists call an amputation of the self. In a matter of hours, the social, financial, and relational identities they spent decades building are abruptly severed. This psychological severance initiates a systemic biological cascade. This chart plots the mortality risk for the surviving partner over time. Notice this massive spike right here. Within the first 3 months of losing a spouse, a survivor's own risk of death jumps by 66. Treating it like a temporary emotional phase ignores the very real trauma happening inside the body. Historically, society has handled this trauma by expecting survivors to follow a linear set of stages of grief, developed in the mid-20th century. This model treats grief like a staircase. We pressure survivors to climb the steps, achieve closure, let go of the deceased, and finally reach a clear endpoint where they can supposedly move on with their lives. Modern research indicates this advice is counterproductive. Actively trying to delete a core biological and psychological attachment triggers deeper identity confusion. The demand to move on is a myth. Forcing a survivor to fight their own neurological wiring and sever their strongest emotional bond actively prevents them from healing. In 1996, grief researchers proposed a framework that aligns with how human attachment actually works. It's called continuing bonds theory. The premise is simple. Healthy grieving does not require detachment. Instead of ending the relationship, the survivor adapts the bond to the reality of their partner's physical absence. In practice, this means intentionally keeping the deceased present in daily life. A widow might maintain an internal dialogue with her husband when making decisions, continue a shared anniversary ritual, or carry his values forward into new projects. True healing acknowledges that the relationship does not end. You do not leave the deceased behind. You figure out how to bring them with you into the future. This raises a practical question. If a survivor is holding on to their deceased partner, how do they actually function, pay the bills, and rebuild a life in the real world? The dual process model maps this nonlinear recovery. On one side is loss-oriented coping, permitting the intrusion of grief and sitting with the pain. On the other side is restoration-oriented coping, taking a deliberate break from grief to manage secondary stressors, like balancing a budget. Bouncing between these two extremes, crying over a memory 1 minute and organizing tax documents the next, is a normal part of adaptation. It is not a sign of being stuck. This continuous oscillation is the precise psychological mechanism that keeps a survivor from burning out. By carefully dosing the pain and shifting to practical tasks, they gradually rebuild a shattered identity over time. But there is a harsh social reality to this oscillation process. As a survivor bounces between grief and rebuilding, their traditional support systems often vanish. Many experience a severe social shrinking. Friends and extended family stop calling, largely because societal norms tell them the survivor should be over it by now. To survive this isolation, modern survivors, especially younger widows, are abandoning traditional circles and building digital peer networks. In these online spaces, widows find people who understand the erratic swings of the dual process model. They provide the validation and shared reality that in-person friends who haven't experienced spousal loss simply cannot offer. Finding these peer networks acts as a vital safety net. It prevents the survivor from collapsing under the weight of social isolation while their identity is still under construction. When a survivor maintains their continuing bonds and navigates the oscillation of grief, they often reach a state known as post-traumatic growth. Post-traumatic growth means the shattered self isn't glued back together exactly as before. Instead, the pieces are reformed into a completely new structure. The survivor integrates the loss into their ongoing life story. They don't erase the pain, and they don't try to get over it. Spousal loss reshapes the trajectory of a person's identity. Grieving isn't a search for closure. It's the process of reaching personal transfiguration. Survivors are allowed to keep the deceased with them, to speak their partner's name, to wear their ring, and to consult their memory indefinitely. True healing isn't about leaving a loved one in the past. It is about letting the enduring bond you share empower the new person you are becoming.